So the question we have here is, how do we manage it when another person doesn't live up to our expectations of them?
Everything everybody does is an expression of their nature. If you say that, well, that's not in their nature, then it simply means you did not assess their nature correctly. It can be apart from their predominant tendencies, but everything they're doing is coming from who and what they are. So the word expectations, we have to understand it perhaps in two separate contexts. The word expectation, when it refers to the mind's activity, this is what's creating disappointment. But the word expectation, we could also use it from a more intellectual perspective perhaps, and use it to mean those obligations and roles that we know are in a person's best interests and that we know they have committed to. So you take a very simple example. You're in a marriage and you commit to monogamy. So you could legitimately say, I expect my partner to be monogamous, in the sense that you have both created that as a guideline or a boundary to define your relationship. And so you have a recognition that that person has made a commitment to that and that it will serve their best interests and your best interests if they maintain it. So this you can think of as perhaps a boundary that everybody agrees is appropriate. But the moment we shift it into an emotional expectation, then what that means is when the person does not live according to that, that's when I experience the disappointment. It's simply a matter of cause and effect. If your mind develops expectations, you will experience disappointment. So how do you deal with it when someone is not living up to those appropriate boundaries? You manage it by managing your own emotion. And so that's done through a self-reflection. What am I experiencing? And as we've discussed, it's not simply a matter of just giving it a label and moving on. Spend a little bit of time and attention really becoming clear on what it is you are feeling. And so it means entering into the emotion. You may feel it in your body in a particular way. So just be very clear. Sit with it for a little bit. Then you go to the prior cause. Why am I experiencing this disappointment? Well, because that person didn't do what they said they would do. Okay, that's the trigger. What's the cause? My expectation. So this is the first part of it. Locating the cause of the disappointment internally. And then you say, what is it that if I knew that disappointment could not arise? And this is where you select from the buffet of ideas. Each person has their own distinct nature. They will helplessly express their nature the same way I am expressing mine. So when we recognize that each person has the freedom to choose their own nature, their own actions, and at the same time we make a correct assessment of that person's nature, then we are managing our expectations. And so that deals with the emotion, and the degree to which we are able to manage the mind in this way will dictate the degree to which we are dealing properly with the emotion. That doesn't tell us how we should then act. If I accept that my partner has transgressed the boundary and I'm not agitated, I'm not disappointed, I'm not hurt, that doesn't mean that I don't have the obligation to deal with it appropriately. I might choose to divorce the person without any sense of conflict or hurt or disappointment. So how you respond to the specific individual in that environment is dictated by a whole host of other circumstantial aspects. But before we respond, it's important that we try and bring ourselves to balance by doing this self-reflection and reminding ourselves of that knowledge that I must have forgotten because I'm agitated, I'm disappointed.
So how does the management of our expectations in this way relate to the concept of forgiveness?
This is essentially the definition of forgiveness. The discussion on forgiveness in the Bhagavad-Gita, he talks about forgiveness essentially being knowledge. Put it this way, if your dog barks every time a skateboard goes past, do you have to forgive the dog? No. It might be annoying to you, it might bug you, and you know that it maybe bugs your neighbours, but do you have to forgive the dog for its behaviour and for making you temporarily annoyed? No, because you know it's a dog, and my specific dog goes crazy when it hears a skateboard. So forgiveness is what? Forgiveness is your natural response to that troubling behaviour, based in or arising out of your knowledge of the nature of dogs and specifically the nature of my dog. So what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet releases onto the heel that has crushed it. So when the world attempts to crush you, your natural response is to release your, as you put it, acceptance of the world. Again, it doesn't tell us how to respond into the world, but forgiveness is essentially the acceptance of things as they are, and that acceptance comes through knowledge.